all the way from the UK, is one of the most respected, in my opinion, musicians, content creators, podcasters, and life coach, gym fitness coaches, personal trainers out there. Mr. Shayan from the band Trivax and Iblis Manifestations. Thank you so much for joining me, sir.
It's an absolute pleasure, man. Thank you for such a kind intro. I'm really glad to be here, and it's good to be talking to you.
Yeah, and one of the things that I'm really, I mean, we'll get to it, but your life did not take a traditional route by no means. Um, just knowing what I know about you as far as um, growing up in the UK, but more so in Iran, which you have been basically scapegoated, fucking vilified by Islamic cultures because of what you do and where you do it, I suppose. And I just want to say that you have my utmost respect of basically just like giving a whole community, a whole sect of population, the middle finger for just questioning your own integrity and you not doing anything to just give in and buy in to what they're selling.
Fucking a. Yeah, well, that's. I guess that's what I do, man. And the thing is, as well, I think it's not even so much by like a deliberate choice. Like it's just kind of an extension of just who I am, and who I have been since even childhood. I've always had a very rough time with authority, being told to do a certain thing, to think a certain way, to the point of absolute nuisance, by the way, like even to people close to me, like even as a kid, I remember, like my parents or like family members asking, "Oh, Shayan, can you please do that?" And my response, without like, just is, I wasn't even trying to be challenging, but my automatic default response is always, "Why? Like, why do you want me to do this? How does this help what we're doing?" Instead of just saying yes and going along to get along. It's just not who I am by nature. So naturally, growing up in a heavily Islamic and totalitarian country like Iran, there are certain things that, it all started with the why. Once again, it was a case of, okay, well, why do you want me to do this? Why do you want me to pray this many times? Why do you want me to accept the fact that if you are someone who's even a born Muslim, who never got to choose their religion, but if you decide to step away from it, that basically makes it okay for them to kill you? Like, why do you want me to accept that? Like, what kind of fucking mental gymnastics are we doing here? And then the whole illusion starts to crumble and shatter around, what you understand, what you were brought up with that religion and certain mindsets. And yeah, like I wasn't, once once my eyes had been opened, it was really difficult to then want to close them again. So I could only keep pushing further in the trajectory in which I'm still on to this day. So here we are, man. Again, thank you for the kind words. So
Absolutely.
yeah, nice to have that in the midst of the death threats and the cancellations and things. So
It's
yeah, it's
it's
nice.
it is it's so wild, man. Just I mean, me growing up Catholic, right? Because I live in South Louisiana, which is, I mean, historically one of the biggest Christian and namely, Catholic re- places to grow up. Um, and like you, I've always questioned why. Why do I have to do this? Why do I have to be confirmed? Why do I have to go to confession? Why do I have to um, basically subject myself, my beliefs, and basically uh, live for some omnipotent God? And and at first glance, it was always, I mean, at first thought for me, especially being a teenager, where the questions of why came up, very frequent. And it's only because and the only answer I was ever given was because, that's what God wants of you. That's what God expects of you and whatnot. So I gotta I have to get down with this blind faith of a and just be hopelessly devoted, you know, because my parents want me to be that or the community wants me to be that. And from that point forward, I was like, well, no, this is I'm not going to buy in just because they got this mass herd mentality. Because everything that I'm seeing, and maybe for me at that age, I was just seeing, I was like picking apart the a few trees from the forest, as they say, because I would see, things like Catholic priests abusing altar boys and shit like that. So as at a very impressionable age, I was like, this is not for me.
So were you a first-hand witness of that?
No, it was just always in the news, especially,
Right.
in the States and especially in the South. You would always read about it in the papers. Parents would talk and talk about
Yeah.
it, in their own upbringing that they would be, conscious of that kind of shit going down. So, for me, it was just like, if all of this is happening, why would your Catholic God allow this shit, right? So, and I say that because I can relate to you. I relate to where like the practices of a certain religion, and I don't know everything about Muslim and Islamic culture. I'm not even going to bullshit you on that. But what I've heard just basically from you and Sina Winter, who I've interviewed, who's also
Oh
from
yeah.
Iran, who
Great
had
guy.
to great, lovely guy, sweet guy. And just hearing how they would persecute their own people just for the sake of like writing music, playing metal music, and just getting involved with like Western culture. It was just against the law, and to the point where you'd be executed on site or some shit like that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a really complicated one. By the way, I really appreciate your transparency and in sharing your story there as well. And I do agree. Like for anyone who's listening, that point of finding common ground despite coming from perhaps seemingly different backgrounds is actually it's a real thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and I always say this to a lot of my friends over here. I'm like, look, like you had to rebel for the sake of a very similar mindset that we had back in Iran, or at least I had anyway, and a very tiny circle of people that you could literally count with one hand. And we all shared the same mindset. It's like, sometimes your inner compass just tells you that the certain way of the world, that the way it's shaping up around you is just not right, and the only way to be true to yourself is to just go against the grain. Okay, and that's one of the hardest fucking things to do for a lot of people. And then people feel this within religions, people feel this within their own party politics. I know since you're in America, I think that's maybe even more relevant. There's so many people who get lumped into like a party, and then they have to buy into things with the wholesale ideology that comes in with it. And then there are parts of it that they don't that they know deep down, okay, this is actually kind of strange, but then they don't want to step against the grain because then it's almost like an own goal. You can't go against your own team. You can't do
No, no,
that.
not at
No.
all.
And this by the way, if I'm not being transparent enough, this applies to both sides of the aisle. Okay, this is just a hypocrisy that exists all across the spectrum. And I think it's a little bit like that with so for us, growing up in an Islamic country, so Islam is basically interwoven in everything in Iran. It's like this fucking cancerous thing that just like spreads its tumors everywhere, and it has a tight hold of everything, whether it's your culture, which, prior to the Islamic Revolution in 1979 was very different. And then, it's got its hands into the laws of the country. It's called the Islamic Republic of Iran, which is
Mhm.
just a complete shit sandwich. And, and it's like, when you grow up in that, it's almost like an abusive relationship. When you grow up in an abusive environment, you just assume that that's how things are supposed to be.
Right.
And then you grow a little bit older and then start getting a glimpse of the rest of the world. You start, like we did, watching some like bootleg copies of films, and then all of a sudden you get hold of this thing called heavy metal that you totally weren't supposed to come across, but you have now. It found you, and then now you start discovering that, and then now you start watching bootleg DVDs of all these bands like Dimmu Borgir or Cradle of Filth, like watching what those guys were like in like early 2000s and being like, this is so fucking different to anything I have ever seen or experienced or I'm used to, that I just absolutely love it. And then it basically lends itself to you as a weapon to basically wield against the bullshit and the mist that is surrounding you, so that was kind of my relationship with heavy metal once I discovered it, really. Like, it gave me a voice, it gave me a tool to be able to fight that bullshit, and also a reason to fight it as well, because I knew that out there somewhere there was something better, you know
Right. And how old were you whenever you caught your first metal bootleg?
Good question. Well, I remember, actually, so there was like different stages to it. I remember watching Last Action Hero when I was 6, and that has Megadeth at the intro.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, see? So, and then some few years later, I remember watching, it was WWF at the time. I think WrestleMania 19, 2003. It's the one at Seattle where Limp Bizkit come out and perform for The Undertaker to come out. But Limp Bizkit also had like the official theme tune for that as well and everything. So that, I was kind of a bit like, oh, what the fuck's this? These guys kind of look silly, but there's a cool fucking thing behind it.
Right.
By the way, rest in peace, their bass player just passed
Yeah,
away
I saw that.
tragically.
Saw that.
Um, I know, as a black metal guy, I'm not supposed to talk about Limp Bizkit, but I don't give a fuck. So, and I'm going to. So, and then that's just me again. Like, I don't follow rules ever.
Hey, you are singing to the choir, my friend, because
Yes.
this started out as a extreme, and it's still extreme metal podcast. But I mean, like, the last episode I released and was a doom metal, and I mean, I can count on my hand how many doom metal acts I had. One, and or no, two. Make that two. I
Okay.
had Hour 13, Chad Davis. But anyway, don't want to get you off your story here.
Yeah, no, all good, man. That's killer. So yeah, and then I kind of became a little bit more familiar, I guess, with the distorted guitar sound. And then roughly around the time I was 13 years old, I think I've said the story many times before, but basically I very accidentally came across Metallica, and I was, it was a music video and the volume was off, but then I made note of the band name, and then like a week later or a few days later, whenever it was, went down to this CD store that was just like a 20-30 minute walk away from our apartment. And these guys, it's like Iran's like so fucking dodgy when it comes to anything. It's like, it's a CD store where they have stuff that you need permit for on display, and then all the bootleg, like, forbidden stuff is just behind the counter. You just got to know the guy, and if he can trust you, he'll just like bring out a pile and then start like offering you shit. And then I went up to him, and then I remember holding this piece of paper being like, I'm looking for this band called Metallica. He was like, oh yeah, we got Metallica. Yeah, sure, here's the discography. And I bought it for, at the time, I think it was $1, you know
Damn.
and yeah. So um it was, yeah, so this was like, I think, up until Saint Anger that I bought. And then I just went home, and at first it was like a little too much to digest, and
Mhm.
then was like, okay, but then I started listening more and more and more and more and more. Literally, it, like, the fucking rabbit hole, like, it just goes so quickly and so deep, like in such a short space of time, that literally within, I'm gonna say, 6 or 7 months of me listening to that discography, not only I was playing guitar and writing my own music, I was also listening to mayhem and black metal. So that's like how
So
it
it's
it
quite the
happened
jump.
for me. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it was like it didn't feel like a jump at the time, but in hindsight, it was just fucking crazy, like because I'm a very obsessive person. If I find some shit that I like, I'm like all over it. I'm either not interested in something at all, or if I find something that clicks for me, then it's like everything is about that thing. And metal, for a possibly ADHD kid, maybe severe ADHD, I've never been diagnosed, but I wouldn't be surprised if I have a very strong form of it.
I think you and I we share similar personalities here, man. Like the more you talking, I fucking hear myself.
Right on, right on. Cool, man. Game knows game. And
Right.
it was just a case of, I found the thing that kind of just resonated with me. And the more kind of darker and shocking it was, it almost put me off at first. But then it drew me in even further, like I was just kind of like, ooh, what's this?
Yeah.
Like we start to break the boundaries of what's acceptable within the human consciousness, and breaking and breaking and breaking until you have to redefine it for yourself. So it's a dangerous and powerful, but also in the long term, possibly a very constructive tool for a young man when I reflect back on my
Yeah,
discovery of
100%.
metal.
Yeah, I could definitely relate to you, man. Because metal found me at a spot where I didn't think then, but I needed it when I found it. Because you admit one of the key words that you mentioned was like abusive relationship, and my home life as a kid wasn't the best. Like it just wasn't, and it's like I always had metal to fall back on and like just get me away from that. It was a means of escape, and and I do have an addictive personality. There's no doubt about it. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I got 17 years sober now, and
Fuck yeah. Congratulations, man. That's
thank you,
awesome.
man.
Really
Appreciate
good
it.
to hear.
And but but before I got sober, man, it was very much that. It was just an addictive personality. I found something that I like, kept going with it, and now in the course of sobriety, life is so much better. And and it's just I know without sobriety for me that there's no way I'd had this conversation with you. There's just no way. There's no way I would like had this podcast or anything as such. So I say all of that because with Iblis Manifestations and the metal coaching that you do, it like you definitely put out this content and this practical application of a fitness coach to empower people, and that to me is just it's very um telling of your personality and just how big of a heart and how what kind of character you have.
Wow. That is literally exactly the reason why I do what I do, man. And you know what? I'm really grateful that you are sat here talking to me. I know, you know, people say and throw stuff like that out there all the time, and there's like this oversaturation of sentiment out there in the current world. But
Mhm.
there is a beauty to that, when it comes from an honest place that you've had to earn to say something like that, and that's a beautiful thing, man. Do you mind if I ask you, what was the so? I mean, you don't have to go into details, but what was sort of like the catalyst to you wanting to change? Like, what made you actually want to get better? Was there like a spiritual catalyst? Was there something like what made you want to fix that?
Let me give you a little bit of backstory. So I was
Please.
27 years old, and my first marriage was like falling apart, like big time because of my addiction and all the things and all the trappings of substance abuse. And I had a young family, and I was a decorated Marine, never been arrested, all of that. And then like in 2008, all that shit just came to a head. I mean, I found myself divorced, I found myself arrested like 2, 3 times. Landed, a 10 nights in jail. And
Mm.
before that, it's like everyone around me, family, close friends, and even some passerbys were just like, "Hey, you might want to look into this fucking drinking issue you got." And I was like, "It's not an issue, at least I didn't think it was." But once jail is a very sobering place, and it just whenever everything around me was like the bridges were burning left and right, and didn't have my kids in my life, it was like something had to give because I was very much on the path. I mean, I was on self-destruction mode, but it was only a matter of time before I fucking kill myself in the process. I mean, it wasn't gonna be it wasn't at the time, it wasn't going by slow. It was happening rather quick, for a 28-year-old who on the outside looking in, I mean, it looked like, it was picture perfect life, but dude, I was fucking falling apart and I was a prey to that, alcoholic misery. And that is something I don't wish on anyone. I don't wish it on my fucking like if I have enemies, I don't wish it on them. That's for sure.
Mhm.
So that September 13th, 2008 was my last blackout drunk, and that was, and that was the setting off point. After jail, found myself in a 30-day rehab and just never looked back.
Hmm. Good for you, man. Good for
Thanks,
you. Yeah, no, that's powerful. I hope people are paying attention to that part. I, again, I don't know if you've already shared the story before, but if you have, it's still nevertheless it's worth people hearing it now anyway. Because, but this is the reason why I asked you. Because like, okay, you can be on a self-destructive path, as I have been before,
man.
and but like there's a reason, like there's a hope, there's got to be a glimmer of of a light somewhere that makes you think, okay, there is something that's worth fighting for, that there is something that I need to change trajectory. That's kind of what I was asking. So what was that? Was it just the sobering effect of the rock bottom itself, or what was it?
I think it was a combination of that, like what you just asked is, just it was sobering, the I realized real quick that I wasn't doing myself any fucking favors.
Huh.
I had 2 young sons, at the time. I mean, they were 4 and 8 at the
Mhm.
time. And now, I mean, they're both now they're I'm sorry, they were 6 and 4, sorry. Um, and they're now 20 and 22. And, I look back at that time and I was like, "Man, I'm gonna end up not losing my kids, but I'm losing my fucking life if I keep drinking, I keep using what I was doing." And then, once I got, cleared up in rehab into 30 days, I was like, okay. I mean, they could have told me that, hey, Mo, you in order to stay sober, you got to put your fucking, do some stupid like run through the fucking field with like snakes and shit. I would have done it. Like I was willing to go above and beyond to any length, as they say, to stay sober. And and that's how I did it, and that's how I continue to do it. Um, I started gaining, self-confidence. I started working out again. And, because a lot of the things that I lost sight of that brought me not just, uh, joy and fun, but, like, just fulfillment, like, I gained all that back, but I lost it completely. Like, I mean, I didn't want anything to do with my own family, towards the end. I was like, I just gave up. I
Mhm.
just gave up, like, trying to live a really decent life. But, uh but yeah, that's basically, what it came down to.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Well, like I said, I'm very glad you're here. And so did you have to go like attend a program for it or something, or did you
Yeah,
just?
yeah, I did a 30 days, inpatient, stay, just like, away from the phone, away from, all my loved ones, and just concentrated on recovery.
Mm.
Uh, because that's what I needed in my life, man. It was, I learned a lot about myself. I was, fucking full of anger, full of fucking, just,
I was gonna come to that anger part because there's
yeah,
a
yeah.
there's a part of what you're saying that's kind of like resonating with me.
The anger part, I had a shit ton of resentment built up in my life, man. Whether it was, like, towards my parents, was it towards, like, someone that spurred me, or institutions even, like, I was having resentments towards, the judge who said I should stay away from my kids because I was, I was, considered violent by the ex-wife and all that, and rightfully so because I was violent. I broke into places I shouldn't have been, or whatever like that. So like the anger part for me, whenever my counselor who I consider saved my life was a fellow addict alcoholic, but he had a degree in substance abuse. He knew how to treat the uh the disease head on, and he recognized, like, like you, he saw some things in me that was going on in his life. And he's like, you walking around with 2 fucking pistols where you just ready to pop off at any time." I remember him doing that. And, he had me compile this list of things that I was pissed off at. And what he did was, like, by seeing that, we went through that list item, like, line item for line item, and just got down with, like, why, where's my part in this? Why am I so pissed off? Why are you pissed off at your dad? Well, because the motherfucker would hit my mom, and I was seeing all this shit. And, uh, I'm pissed off because I was so scared. I was like, it was fucking fear. Like, everything that I was pissed off about had fear tied to it. Fear of losing my status, fear of losing my mom, fear of losing my kids, fear of being alone, fear of dying.
Mhm.
It was always some type of, selfish fear that was tied to my anger and my disappointment. And then once I was able to single that out and recognize my part, I knew what to do about it, you know,
Mhm.
moving forward with the with recovery.
Hmm. Very well, very well. Once again, that is fantastic. And by the way, I hope you don't mind me asking you the questions,
Not at
but
all, man.
I am genuinely interested, and also I thank you for sharing that as well. Because the
Absolutely.
thing is, you never know like who that could help just by you putting that out there. When people realize like, oh yeah, shit, I'm not on my own by feeling this way. Because that anger that you talk about, I can picture it. Um it's like I can almost visualize a place in myself that as we're talking, I can access that same old channel of emotions, that same pipeline almost. Like it's still there. I just don't use it anymore. And I try not to use it in the same way at least, and try to be more productive with that energy and that fierceness. Because I think that there are many of us, the way I look at it is I know like there's a lot of like stigma around even having a talk like this, and I clearly don't give a shit about that.
Yeah, neither do
But
I.
good. But it's like to me, emotions, they're almost like a physical substance. You need to find a home for them.
Right.
And if you've had all this pressure on you from a young age, whether it's from family, and sometimes stuff can be passed on from like DNA that you don't even fucking know about. When they talk about generational trauma or whatever, it's not necessarily this like tree hugging hippie fucking thing. It's
No,
just
it's a real
something
thing.
that it's a real thing that lives in us. You don't know what your parents or what your grandparents or what their parents survived just to be alive and just to go on. And that's why sometimes it feels like there's like these cracks between us and the matrix, because it's like I everything's supposed to be normal, but it just doesn't fucking feel like it. And the more you try to force it to be normal, the more shit goes wrong. This is the thing, you
Mhm.
know? And I think recognizing that is quite important, but also recognizing that you need to exercise those emotions. When I say it's like a physical substance, that's what I mean. It's almost like it's like the light that you got to send through the triangle first before it comes out rainbows on the other side. That's this process of alchemy with involved with emotions. And I think there are many of us, men in particular, who especially get drawn to this style of music where a lot of that anger and that fierceness, it's like an anger and heaviness that lives inside your chest, but you don't know what to do with it, so you just keep carrying it around all day, and it almost becomes a center of gravity where it just attracts more of the same feeling to itself. And you walk around with this big black ball in your chest everywhere, that no one can see, but you know it's there, and you don't necessarily know what to do with it. And that thing needs to be exercised. And if it's not, then it will turn into self destructive behavior.
Definitely, definitely. And there, in the course of my 17 years of being sober, it hasn't been all sunshine and rainbows. Life still fucking happens. Just because I got recovered, and and like you said, I have to fucking like put the spiritual toolkit to work. For me personally, on a daily basis. Because if not, you know, the anger will come out, or the fear will start fucking acting out,
Hmm.
and in a number of ways where it will just activate all my character defects, whether it's isolating, whether just fucking just evade trying to evade and be dishonest and all this shit, or we're like relying on old habits, you know uh and for me, like, I don't wanna live that way. I've done that, for 28 years. As long as I was drinking, I got no use for it. I don't,
Hmm.
because I have a small window of opportunity to get things done spiritually for me, because if I don't, then I'm gonna be fucking miserable, and I'm gonna make the people around me miserable.
Mm. Can I tell you something? One thing that I immediately respected when when you were telling me, when you told me that you've been sober for 17 years, is the fact that you said you've been sober for 17 years, not, oh, I quit around this time and then occasionally, every now and then, I have a little bit of fun. You
No.
know,
Yeah.
that I respect, because that's the same approach that I have taken, about not for as long of a time. But it's that same conclusion. It's like, well, this shit don't fucking serve me. All it does is create damage. And you start to think, well, maybe its entire purpose is to create damage. Maybe its entire purpose is to keep the frequency of humankind on a lower level, whereas it can be much higher than that. So, with that said, do you mind if I ask, when you said use the spiritual toolkit? So, do
Mhm.
you mind elaborating on that a little bit
Oh, not
more?
at all, man. No, I'm a product of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm gonna put it out there. Um, and from an early standpoint, once I got into meetings and I started getting a sponsor and whatnot, I mean, I relied on the 12 steps. I still do to some degree. Um, I think as of the past 5 years, uh, my involvement, my participation in AA, has not been, like it was when I first started out. But I've never drank, never had, uh, the want to drink or anything like that.
Mhm.
But for me, you know, I have to meditate on certain things, because I know that if I don't speak it out into existence, then for me, it's just not gonna happen. Like, um, I gotta put things on paper still. Like whether I'm fucking pissed off at certain individuals, or if I'm fucking just wrapped up in fear, like, why I'm in fear. And I gotta talk to somebody about it. I'm still really, really good friends with some friends of mine that are in AA, and I gotta talk to before any big decision or anything I do with my life, I gotta talk to 3 people. That's just me. Because if I run on my instincts, chances are it's the wrong decision. That's just me.
Mhm.
Uh, but normally I'm bringing stuff into meditation. If there's a certain fear, like, hey, you gotta take this shit from me. Just help me be a better person. Help me be honest. I gotta speak that into the world, because if I don't hear myself, help me be honest, help me be of service, help me put back in the mainstream of life. You know, if I don't hear that, then I'm not gonna do it, and I gotta do that every morning that I'm alive, because it's the I consider that the bare minimum. For me spiritually, just doing those things. And but like even in the heat of the moment, if I'm getting into it with somebody, and like they're pissing me off, well, what I've been taught was just use the power of the pause. There's no hurt in hitting the fucking pause button and say, all right, look, this particular situation is not doing me any good. I got to walk away from it. Some people say, oh, you're running away. No, 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 no. I'm gonna come back and revisit this conversation, but right now it's probably not the best time because me being raised the way I was, and being a Marine infantryman who who uh who was always taught to fucking strike first and make it count. I'm gonna throw some daggers at you. It's gonna fucking hurt,
Mm.
and I'm
Mhm.
gonna and me on the backside of that, I'm gonna fucking regret it. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to piss you off, hurt your feelings, and then have to fucking apologize for it. Cause I don't want to apologize because I got the fucking ego still, you know?
Fucking hell, that's so relatable, man. The thing with it as well, we're talking about the spiritual. I'm gonna be extremely blunt here because I've learned this is actually the best way.
Yeah.
God responds really well to confidence. Okay. That energy, that voice that comes out of you before, like that comes out of your gut and then gets to your throat and goes out into the world,
Mhm.
God responds to confidence for that. It's like a signal. You don't want to scramble your own signal. You just want to say it like it fucking is.
Right.
And don't hold back and don't be shy and don't be afraid of how people are going to judge what you're going to say, because you know that the thing that you are saying is connected to the truth. It's connected to your truth because it's coming out of your gut, and you've been keeping yourself clean and clear as much as possible to create for a better vestige almost. And I think that, you know, now again, I'm when I'm saying this, I'm not necessarily referring to what you're saying about the heat of the moment thing, because that is true. That is true. I actually think there's demonic beings that look for comfort, and they use you as a tool to manifest themselves in that sort of explosive situations. Because, I'll make an example and perhaps you'll relate to this, but I've had situations where I have talked to people, and I'm quite good at arguing. I'm very good at coming up with reason. Like I could have almost been like a solicitor or like a political debater. I'm very good at that. But I've learned through life and just kind of like reflecting on my own feelings of things. In fact, one of the biggest lessons I've learned in life, it's not always about being right.
Oh yeah,
It's
definitely.
about how you go about it instead, and how do you maintain your own composure and your own morals and your own humanity. Because, like you could very easily say, well, this is the truth. This is what happened. Fuck them if they don't like it, and that's 100% me, so like I'm having to go against my natural default
Yeah.
with these things, in a situation of conflict, of course. Like I don't want to make someone feel like shit just because I know the truth and they're not listening. That's fine. You just got to be patient with people, and that's a lot easier said than done. But when it comes to on the other side of the coin, back to what I was talking about with spirituality, if you want to talk about God, if you want to talk about your thing, you want to be as confident as possible when you talk about that, because like the doubt in your voice can be heard, and you don't want that. You don't want the universe to think you're shy. You don't want the universe to only give you, if you give the universe only 80%, the universe will give you 80% in return.
Mhm.
Okay. So you want to dial it to 100%. It's like, no, this is it. This is my truth. This is the God that I know. And this is what want to be connected to. And once you say that, it reflects back at you exactly the same thing. And that confidence doesn't happen overnight either. You have to work at it, and you have to work really fucking hard to earn it. But it is absolutely worth it, because you'll start to notice synchronicities in the universe, and that reality starts speaking back at you. It starts talking to you, like things will align themselves just so that you are in the right place.
Yeah, 100% makes sense, man. It does. And I guess I'm really curious, you know, where or what did you tap into to get that type of mindset? Was it just something that was like something that your family imparted on you, or something you took upon yourself to investigate further?
That's a good question. Um, so just to give background, because I appreciate, I totally appreciate. I just talk in the moment like how it is, and I appreciate for some people who might not necessarily be fully aware of my background, this may come across a little confusing. Some of the things that I've said so far, because people might be like,
Not at all.
well, 1 minute ago you were saying that, now you're saying this. I think if I give the background, that'll make my position on things a lot clearer, at least. And it's the following. So I grew up in a heavily religious totalitarian environment, and I thought that was the normal. And that religion was Islam. Okay. Something which, by the way, to this day, I still have a lot of resentment for. Although my resentment is becoming more and more rational by the day, but the sentiment remains regardless, which is an interesting process to observe even just for myself, like how those thoughts and emotions towards that particular sect are developing for me. And and the thing for me was my journey all the way up until I was 14, 15 years old was a practicing Muslim who believes in God, but genuinely had my own relationship with God and all of that. But I did it through the scope of Islam, which, by the way, never felt right to me either. Like I always thought, I was so paranoid. I was like, why does this feel so weird? Like this
Yeah.
doesn't feel right. I'm not even speaking my own language. It's Arabic. This feels really strange to me. Do I have to speak Arabic for God to understand me? And because you have to in Islam, you have to read in Arabic. And you know, it just felt strange. And then I discovered metal, discovered the lyrics of black metal and all of that. And then I was like, oh, okay, you can say fuck you to this thing that I've been told to bow down to. Like in Islamic prayers, you literally, there's a process of bowing down, as you've probably seen videos of it. It's like you have to bow down like however many times, and there's certain numbers to it. And I'm like, I don't want to submit my spirit to that fucking thing anyway. But kind of fast forward, I become an atheist. But then as I get a little bit older, like when I'm like 18, 19, I'm like, okay, what's this? What's the occult? Start reading all that stuff, and then start getting into the left hand path, start getting into theistic Satanism. And then I hit a point in my life where everything's going tits up, and I have severe paranormal experiences and shit that's just fucking crazy that I couldn't believe even happened. It redefined what I understand of science, and clearly, like, there's more shit to life than what we know.
Mhm.
Which, if you wanted me to, I'm happy to elaborate, but I'm just giving you my background
Yeah,
on
I was about to say,
spirituality.
I was waiting for a brief pause in what you were saying, so I could get a quick example of something that you've went through personally that
Yeah,
made you question everything that you know.
yeah. So I will come to that. I promise. I promise. I don't lose my train of thought easily. So I have personal experiences that kind of redefine spirituality to me. Okay. And then I'm sort of in this weird limbo where it's like, well, I'm not really an atheist anymore. I believe in spirituality and things, but I still hadn't quite connected with the idea of God itself. Like reconnected, I should say, but from a newfound perspective. Then I get into fitness. Then I start changing who I am. Then everything starts clicking. And then I just go through this massive transformation of mind, body, and spirit. And the three finally feel like they're in a place of alignment in the last 3 or 4 years. And it's a constant work in progress. I am not perfect. I still make mistakes here and there. But then I find myself in this position that, oh no, like, you all you have to do is, even in your mind, if there's questions, if there's stuff that you don't understand, just communicate. And I find that sort of relationship with God, and just talking and communicating, and then just being true, and then being of the mindset that every single this is what helped me, being of the mindset that every single action that you take is witnessed. That makes a world of difference. Okay. And I think that's actually a healthy mindset to have for an addict as well, because there's this element of morality that comes into it, that it's like, oh, I'll just have a bit here, I'll have a little bit there, no one's watching, you know? And that to me is like the definition of sinning, is that you think no one's watching, but you're watching. Like God is watching through you because
Right.
it's in you. And once I started implementing that for like the last couple of years of my life, everything changed. Everything changed. And then the actions that I put in, everything just becomes so aligned. And then everything that you want to see happen just starts falling into place. It's like these bricks, it's like these little matrix spiders keep like building this like pathway in front of you as you keep stepping forward and walking. But all you got to do is keep walking forward. So that's where my spiritual beliefs are at the moment. And that's how I arrived in this position where, I know I grew up in an Islamic country and I'm talking about God so openly because that's what I believe in. And I'm fine with that. Now, coming back into the personal experiences that made a lot of those changes, that kind of like forced me to look at the world differently. I talked about this on the very first episode of Iblis Manifestations, where I basically lived in this apartment in Birmingham with my ex partner at the time. We moved in there right after I finished university, and we had a bit of help. It was the attic of this large Victorian house in the Erdington area of Birmingham. People can look this up for themselves. Where that actually is, it's right up the road from the McDonald's on the right hand side if you're going from Birmingham into Sutton Coldfield. So if anyone's curious to go and look on
That's
Google
quite
Maps where that
specific.
is. Yeah, absolutely.
I
I
don't think
remember.
anyone. I don't think anyone on this podcast ever like revealed where they used to live. In such a description.
Well, it's an interesting one. So, and up until this point, I've had like various experiences that I just really couldn't experience. I couldn't explain. You know,
Mhm.
and I come from a background of Iranians can be superstitious, but they're also extremely logic driven to the point of like you're a pariah for even talking about ghosts and things like that.
Right.
And it's only like the odd, like sometimes like really strangely, like some like super rich people will come out and then start talking about like spirituality and ghosts and paranormal stuff. It's really bizarre how that people like that are bigger believers than the than the mortals
Com
on
Yeah.
earth, like who
Yeah.
who are just living a normal life. But anyway, long story short, we move into this flat, and within the space of like we got the contract for like 6 months, if I remember correctly. We paid a deposit, and quite a bit of money at the time as well. 'Cause we didn't really have much income. I don't know what the fuck we were thinking anyway. But we move in there, and like literally, I start feeling really strange things on the first night, and then the second night, she starts seeing shit, and then I start seeing shit. Like I literally watched the door fucking like turn the lock and open itself, and then there was no one on the other side.
Fuck.
And bro, it was like fucking. I thought, am I going insane? Like we were sober too. Like we were
Yeah, yeah.
literally sober, and then I'm watching this door, the lock like literally turn itself, pull the door open, and then there's no one on the other side. It's like okay, like and it, like crazy shit. And it was an attic, so if someone wanted to do that just to fuck with us to go down, you'd hear them going down the stairs. Like
Right,
there's a
right.
lot of stairs to go down in this narrow hallway by the door. Creepy as fuck.
Yeah, and wrong
And
answer.
then
Out of there.
yeah. Well, this wasn't even that bad. This was just the first thing that we saw. And
Damn.
then, shit starts moving around the flat like at night, wardrobes open and close themselves. There's this vape like white smoke that kind of goes through the walls. And I kept watching
Mm.
it like, what the fuck am I looking at? I remember being on the bed, she's to my left, and the window's to her side of the room, and the door is in front of me. But then I've got this white plastered wall in front of me here, and I can see this fucking white smoke going in and out of it. And I'm just sat there at the edge of the bed, like I'm half laying down in bed, and then one elbow up. I'm just looking at this thing going in and out of the wall. I'm like, what the fuck am I even looking at here? And yeah, it was just so strange. And then every time I went to sleep, and I closed my eyes, I could see this purple face. I
Mhm.
can see this thing coming and just like hovering over me like this. But it's like when I opened my eyes, I couldn't see a thing, although I felt like something was on me. And when I closed my eyes, I can see a purple face. And this face did not look very happy with me. And then I actually depicted this face to the artist who did the cover of the first Trivax album, Sin, and that's
Mhm.
the face that's on the cover. The only difference is that the face that's on the cover is smiling, but it's very identical to the face I was seeing when I
Wow.
was in the flat. So if people want to search Trivax Sin, the album cover, that's what you're looking at. So anyway, and yeah, I remember it very specifically being purple and being really close to my face. Very, not even like scary, but creepy and like disgusting. It had a disgusting feel to it. And yeah, basically we started, and then on like the last day we were like hearing people. I heard this woman talking who was just saying like I don't know where that was coming from. It was in the living room. We were getting changed to leave to go to this pub because we were both like, this place is fucked up. And then I just heard this voice of a woman going like going like that, and I was like,
Yeah.
and I turned to her. I thought it was like a phone, or like it sounded like a radio. I said to her, I said, "Did you hear that?" She was like, "Yeah, we need to get the fuck out of here."
Yeah. Yeah, no shit, man.
Well, it was fucking crazy. So you asked me what were the experiences that I had that changed my mind about everything. Well, that week really fucking did it, and I had nightmares and woke up screaming for like a year later. But you know what was really interesting? This
What's
part I
that?
haven't talked about as much. I went back there about, I'm gonna say, so this was June 2016. I went back there April 2017
Mhm.
because I was meeting one of my friends who then later ended up becoming a massive YouTube channel and whatnot. And I was meeting with him and his mother, a good friends of mine. And we were actually just down the road from that flat. And then I was like, I want to go past there. I was like actually kind of scared as well. And then I go outside the flat, I find it. Lo and behold, this is the strangest fucking thing because it was a nightmare to get out of the tenancy contract because we left it so prematurely and we had already like signed a contract for 6 months. The reason why we exchanged was because another tenant obviously took over our place. That's why they were able to release us after like a month or something like that, a month or two, and then give us back like, and then basically cut the rent from there. But we did lose money up until that point because we had to run away. I go outside the flat. This is not even a year after we were there. And that entire attic, all of the windows are boarded up,
Wow.
right? So they're not even renting it out anymore. I don't know what
Yeah,
the fuck happened. I still
that
like beat
that
myself. Like, could I have probed more? Could I have found out some more information about what happened to those people? But the person I was at the time, I wasn't quite like as switched on to like really dig for stuff like that. I just saw that and was like, okay, this is fucked. Clearly something happened to the people that went there after us.
mhm,
So I don't know,
that
man. There was
that
something there, and that just, changed my worldview.
me being a Native American, I guess I've always, been in tune with the supernatural, like, I was always had an open mind to certain things, and, and I try real hard not to, like, tell stories of, like, some of the shit that I've firsthand experienced because people probably look at me like, "Dude, come on, really?" Something like that. But I
But
believe
sorry
you.
to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you. By the way, it's really interesting that you're Native American because I know there's a lot going on with that DNA in that land. But I feel exactly the same thing. But as I kind of said to you earlier, the key is to just be confident and just
Oh,
like
yeah.
talk about it. People
Oh, yeah.
can listen to it and think he's bullshit. And that doesn't change the reality of what I experienced. So
Mhm.
that's why I'm kind of like, I don't give a shit at this
Yeah, yeah.
point in
I
time.
and
Just
I
lose me or die.
totally respect that
Makes no
about you, man.
difference. Yeah,
Totally
that's it.
respect that about you.
Thank you.
And, and well, I just really curious about, like, was that type of that experience is what got you more into, like, learning more about, uh esoteric practices and whatnot? Like, or um, and what did you study? Like, what is your go to?
Good question. I think I was already kind of like into the practices of certain things prior to that. Very left hand path, very theistic Satanist. Like very, I
Mhm.
took that quite seriously. But I think it almost like it gave me a scare as to like how dangerous that stuff actually is. People
Yeah.
don't realize how dangerous it is to dabble in the occult. People don't realize how fucking dangerous it is to start playing around with these things. And people don't realize that human beings, you want to talk about alcohol, human beings are vessels of spirits, which can be both good and bad. And each person at a time can be influenced by either one of those. Okay. And then there are multiple different characters within the good and bad realms that can take over the the human vessel. And that's why if you want to do good, you have to do it step by step on a one day at a time basis.
Mhm.
Because the moment you start to become confident that, okay, I've already done the good, that this doesn't matter how far you climb, the distance between you and the ground is always the same. Okay. All it takes is one fuck up and you're back there again, you
Right.
know? And I can appreciate perhaps, as someone who's been sober for such a long time, you understand that process very well.
Oh yeah. I've seen so many friends of mine and people that I've just, got to know on basic an AA basis where, they thought they could do different by going back out and, just having one drink or just saying, like you said before, like just, hey, nothing's gonna fuck me up this time. I've been, I got some experience drinking. I deserve this, whatever reason it is. They go back out and it doesn't just stop with their fucking it doesn't stop with just one beer. I mean, they're off. They're back on where they were and using other things. I had friends of mine that fucking went back out and fucking OD'd. So, I mean,
Wow.
it was like you know, that's another those are I'm thinking about 2 friends in particular, my friends, Charlie and Mikey. They had died probably within 2 years apart. They had OD'd, and, that was fucking scary as fuck for me being, um, I think I might have had 4 or 5 years of sobriety at the time, and I just watched them fucking, one was going through a very difficult time, lost his girlfriend. He hid out in a hotel room, drank himself to oblivion, ended up fucking, hanging himself, and the other just fucking
Oof.
OD'd, and the other just OD'd because, again, like, they I life is gonna happen, whether I'm getting promoted for a job or if I'm gonna, or, lose a loved one. I mean, it's bound to happen. Um, and that goes for everyone in life, and for alcoholics and addicts that use like me, I implore them to stay on the spiritual path and doing everything you can to stay recovered because, dude, like, it's the world's a fucking tough place. And I know the moment I ever entertain the thought of drinking or using again, dude, I mean, just might as well put me in a fucking in rehab facility again because I mean, at that time I'm already fucking relapsed, and I just it's always a fleeting thought. People ask me all the time, do I ever think about it? Do I miss it? I'd be lying if I said that I don't miss it because I used to fucking drink like no one's business, and I had a really good time until that fucking good time stopped, where I just
Mhm.
turned straight to fucking misery, man.
Mm, absolutely. Well, we are very lucky that we get to hear those stories of people, and I'm very unfortunate about those two friends of yours that you mentioned. Um, but what a privileged position are we in to look at that and learn from it, even
Right.
though they were the ones that paid for it.
Yeah.
And this is exactly the point that I was trying to make. That doesn't matter how far you climb in life, the distance between you and the rock bottom remains the same. All it takes is one mistake and you're fucked.
Yeah.
And there's the clear, perfect example of it. And so the trajectory I was going with what I was saying is that human beings are vessels of spirits that can be both good and evil. And I think that you can be a good person at one set of time or on one day, but you still, as that same person, has the capacity to have the same capacity to be evil on another day. Okay. So it's a continuous battle, which actually, if you look at the more spiritual descriptions of humans as a whole and the idea that we're imperfect, it actually kind of makes perfect sense. Okay.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely.
And what I start seeing is that now there are certain things you can do to open yourself to more of certain spirits, to more of a higher frequency, to a certain beings. And that is a process that requires daily attention. I found that exercise helps with that. I
Mhm.
found that doing cold exposure helps a lot with that. I don't know if you've tried that, but it is fantastic for that. There is a spiritual angle to it that I think people don't realize until they do it and go through it for themselves.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you this, the reason why I quit drinking alcohol, aside from like physical, like health benefits, philosophical benefits,
Mhm.
numero uno is spiritual benefits and spiritual reasons. Because there's a reason why they're called spirits, if you think about it.
Yeah.
What happens is that your body and you as a person are a vessel for spirits. Then the more you drink alcohol, you allow the entry of these other spirits to come and take over your vessel. And that's why what happens is when your vessel is overcrowded, your spirit leaves, and that's the blackout drunk. And the spirits which have taken over the vessel then start to abuse it and do all kinds of things because to them there is no cost of destroying and ruining the vessel which they have taken over.
Yeah.
And that's why alcohol is such a dangerous fucking thing.
Ah, it is.
And this also then made me kind of realize and rethink how I interact with the world. Like, what kind of spirit do I want to have take over me? What kind of spirit do I want to channel through music? What kind of spirit do I want to put out there with the podcast and the words that I say and with the general thing that I want to have out there? And then the more and more you start to live that experience with that intent, you realize, holy shit, we are living in the middle of a massive spiritual warfare on this earth that is a 24 hours thing. Like people
Mhm.
who all of a sudden attempt the assassination of a family man. That's a demonic thing taking over that person.
Definitely.
Watching innocent people and children and women die, that is a demonic thing that is taking over. But the more I look at it through that scope, and the lesser I judge and have hatred for the people, the more it all starts to make sense to me, because even someone who does something terrible is still capable of doing something great later on in their life if they choose to, you know?
Yeah, only if they choose to, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so you gotta leave room for that sense of guidance, and yeah, I've had variety of other experiences, some that I probably shouldn't go into here, but just understand that the things that I am talking about, I am talking of with utmost certainty. And I think that there's like certain acts, like certain things, with certain things that you say, I think it leaves you open and vulnerable to that demonic thing taking over, you know?
Like, w Elaborate on that if you don't mind. Like what like some negative things like towards people or like negative like some negative self-talk?
I think it's how you allow yourself to feel.
Mhm.
How you allow yourself to feel in a certain moment leaves you vulnerable. It essentially like leaves your vessel open to something else to come in. Look
Okay.
at what you were saying earlier. If you're in the midst of like an argument or something, you need to step away from it because you don't know what's going to come out. Because there's things out there behind the walls of reality that you can see with your eyes that hates humans, wants to hurt humans as much as possible. And you could be its vessel if
Yeah,
you
definitely.
give in to that feeling. Do you see what I mean?
Oh yeah, definitely because I know that it's real easy for me in the middle of like, some argument or like, and like that anger is triggered for whatever reason. Someone could say something to me that just I feel it in my core and like whatever's being said, it's it's touching on something that, you know, that's wounded, I guess, from years back. Has nothing to do with the the current argument, but whatever that was said, it activated something that says, "You know what? This is a fucking target, and I gotta eliminate it by all means." And in doing so, I'm gonna hurt myself in the process. So, you know, I've over the years, I like to think that I've kind of reined that in, and and that took a lot of spiritual practice on my behalf for sure, because whereas before I would just pop off and say what the fuck I wanted and deal with the consequences later. And then I've learned that that's not for me, it's not the way to go because, I could have all the confidence in cutting somebody down. And but on the back end of that, I'm like, fuck, man, that was way too harsh. That was way too and now I gotta, like I said before, I gotta go make an apology and say, you know what, look, you and I both made some solid points, but what you said, cut me, so I had to cut you back, So I'm gonna try and be the bigger person here and apologize because I know that your punk ass won't. You know, I gotta take responsibility for my own actions is my end point.
But the thing is, that's a very liberating thing.
Oh yeah,
It's
definitely.
it's very underrated, you know? Like for so many years I held so much grudges against people who I felt like, "Oh, I feel wronged by them," or whatever
Mhm,
the fuck that means anyway.
mhm.
And you keep holding on to that, They say like holding a grudge is like drinking poison expecting the other person to
Correct. Yeah,
die. That's
yeah.
not how this works. You just end up hurting yourself in the end anyway. And you got to understand that from a karmic perspective, people are connected. Like to me, I was always the person that if you hurt me, I was gonna get you back 10 times, 20 times fucking harder. Like
Yeah.
zero, like it wasn't eye for an eye, it's eye for an entire family tree. Like that's what I
Right,
was always like. Because I
right.
have capacity for that level of rage in me. I know I do. And it's been really interesting for me to one of the ways that I've learned to navigate this, and I'm still kind of learning. I'm intrigued how this evolves internally, but like having haters, like having haters who like really like try to get under your skin and really like try to like target you and target things around you that you care about, and then it's like, and you're stronger than that person. You know
Mhm.
that if you met that person in real life, you turn them into mashed potatoes, but that then but at what cost? Like if I hurt that person, if I really get them back, I'm the one who's either going to go to jail, and even
Right.
if I get away with it at the time, then every time I'm going to be on tour or on the road, I'm constantly watching over my shoulder in case someone wants to
Yeah.
settle the score with me that maybe they started in the first place. But you know what I mean? It's like that kind of stuff. I don't need that shit in my life. I don't need that.
No.
Right?
No,
I'd
no
rather
one
just
does.
focus. No one does. And I'd rather just focus on excellence. I'd rather just focus on greatness and becoming the best, most fucking powerful version of myself I can become and lift everyone around me up at the same time with it. So I ain't gonna give the haters the thing that's gonna satisfy them the most, even if
Yeah.
that's a fucking black eye. I ain't gonna give him that. I mean, I ain't gonna give him the satisfaction, because ultimately, as well, a thing you got to realize in life is when people start targeting you, it's not personally against you either. It's a reflection of them.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. I
And you
believe that
never know what
wholeheartedly.
that person's been through. Yeah, you never know what
Mhm.
that person's been through. You don't know if like their father maybe like abused them as a child or something like that, and it's like, everyone gets given a choice on a day-to-day basis if they want to be a good person or if they want to be a piece of shit. Okay, and that person has chosen to go down that path, but what choice are you gonna make? That's the most important thing.
That's correct, man. I couldn't have said it better myself because every day we're just given this golden opportunity to wake up and like you said, make a choice whether you're gonna be a good person or a shitty person. And I don't go out of my way to fucking just piss people off or like fucking hurt their feelings. If anything, uh, I attempt to do what you do, in with the pot with the platform that that I use, showcase bands, if there's some younger like local bands around here that are in the middle green, that's I try to give them as much publication or exposure as one could get with this channel that I got. That's one thing, and then the next is just just like I could just do something as simple as fucking like holding a door for someone, uh, at an office building or some shit. It's in because like you said, it's all karmic related. It always comes back in some form or another. I believe that just as much as you do, and I'm really curious, Cheyenne, is like what you do, every morning whenever you wake up. Like what are some things that how do you prep yourself? How do you get into that mindset? Because I know that every day is the most perfect day, but somehow you get up and you tell yourself something or you do something that makes it a good day.
Well, the first thing I do is put my head in the pillow and start screaming. No, that's a joke. No, yeah, I just practice gratitude. That's been
Yeah.
a very powerful anchoring thing in my life. Is in the more recent years where I've kind of learned, what, you actually have a lot to fucking fight for every day. Is just have gratitude. That's my anchoring thing every morning. It's not, I don't have like one of those crazy morning routines like Mark Wahlberg, where it's like wake up at 2:35 a.m., start praying, and then do 10 push-ups and then go take a cold bath. Sometimes my life looks like that. Don't get me wrong,
Mhm.
but to me, it's just the feeling of gratitude, and can't think of a day where I've missed that anytime recently.
Yeah,
I don't think I skipped that part. I think it's very important, and the thing is as well, with gratitude, it's something that you can have regardless of who you are and where you are in life and in the world. Okay.
absolutely.
Because you know that saying, I heard that a lot on Joe Rogan. It's like the worst thing that happened to you is the worst thing that happened to you. That is very true.
Yeah,
But it's like
definitely.
you can also look at it with glass half full as well. So I think just a simple fact, even if like you're in a situation where, I don't know, like hypothetically speaking, let's say if you're in like complete financial ruin, let's say if like relationships broken down, let's say,
Mhm.
like, you can always find something that you can be grateful for. And
Definitely.
at the very, like, bottom of that list, which by the way is like the coolest fucking thing you can have, is being alive. You can just
Mhm.
have gratitude that you're alive.
Yeah, I mean, when I was in my first trip to rehab, my first and only trip to rehab, I should say, the same counselor who had me write down all my fucking, list of, things that was pissing me off, all my resentments and whatnot. He on the flip side of that, he said, "I want you to write down everything you're fucking thankful for." And that's where he had me write down my fucking first gratitude list, and it made me realize, like, I skipped on, like, I didn't realize it, but I was skipping out on a lot of shit. Like the first thing that I wrote down was like, I'm grateful for my sons, grateful for, being alive and, this and that. But he was like, man, you know, you got how many fingers you got, Mo? And I was like, 10. He's like, wow, fuck, you could hold a pencil and put that pencil to fucking paper, can't you? There's a lot of people that can't.
Yeah,
You got 2
exactly.
legs, you got some feet that brought you into this building, right? Like, yeah. Well, guess what? You could walk. I was, just I always fucking like, I'll have a tendency to overlook such things, especially back then, you know? So, like, yeah, there's always something to be fucking grateful about, something there's always a fucking silver lining that we don't ever see, and someone else could point it out for you, and I know that I owe my life to being recovered, because, yeah, there's a lot of shit out there, man, that just makes life even more difficult for us, whether we have the emotional childhood traumas or the alcoholisms or whatever it is that it may be. Like, there's something that's gonna wear you down, and you just gotta be, not only grateful, but, sharpened and confident to walk through all that.
Absolutely, man.
Yep.
Preaching to the choir. Love it.
Well, man, look, we've been talking a lot, and we pretty much didn't even talk about music just yet. So I just kind of want to segue into that, if you don't mind, if you got the time. Um,
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
but
this is very typical of me. This is as you
yeah, yeah,
as you've
man,
heard Iblis, this is just me, you know?
yeah, and I don't mind it one bit. I didn't think there was going to be like any structure to the interview at all. So I just love the way it's been going. It's great.
Well, the
Um,
structure is called truth, that's what I'll say.
There you go. Yeah. And you're a very extreme person, and I really respect that, and I understand where it comes I understand more and more where that comes from. With every time watching one of your episodes or talking to now I get to talk to you personally, and I I'm just really curious for those who don't know who you are, you can explain to them, you know, why it is that your songwriting is the way it is.
Why is my songwriting the way it is? Interesting, you know? Well, I guess people would have to, like, hear my songs first. Um, I look at writing music as decorating time, and I like to create a simulation for myself that when I get to listen to it, but more importantly, play the songs on stage, I'm going to feel as complete as possible, uh, spiritually, and that hopefully that's an experience that other people in the band, but also people in the audience, can feed from as well. So that's all I'm doing, you know. I'm creating my own roller coaster that I like to keep sitting in, and then pressing the button so it just like kind of goes around and does the motions. And
Mhm.
usually I'm like, ooh, that bit could have gone on for a bit longer, or oh, this bit could have had a few more twists. Oh, this bit just needs a little bit of a calm and quiet before it fucking drops you down. That's how I approach songwriting. You know, I'm creating simulations and decorations of time that every time people listen to it, they will have their emotions and thoughts transformed.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
That's great, man. I mean, and the product that you create is it's so violent, man, and Nate and like, and I've used that word a lot. I mean, I guess it just comes with the territory of being, a fan of black metal and extreme metal. But I was re-listening to your latest album, The Great Satan, and um, not being the world history buff. I went back and I actually like researched what happened in 1979 when
Mm.
that particular leader that y'all used as the focal point as Great Satan. Um, and I was like, man, you know what? I've never been, I never lived in I mean, best of my knowledge, like lived in a environment such as 1970s Iran, where basically the rug was pulled out from the people as far as going into a theocracy, and then and then the children that were go that was living through that, like yourself, it's like, man, I mean, that's a whole 'nother breed of anger and frustration that you had
Mm.
to live in, and,
And still live.
so, like yeah, and still is, yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like, I could only imagine what that's like,
Uh-huh.
and to know that someone like yourself is just going completely against the grain, like, just doing everything that you love musically and artistically with no fucking fear of the consequences is just, in my opinion, like, the most human experience that one could possibly live.
I love that. Yeah, it is though. That's the thing. It feels like it. And just to give context as well, like the situation with the Iranian people, it's not, like when the revolution happened, everyone was like, right, we got it. We found the thing, we found the identity of the country. Obviously they were very wrong, but within the first year there was like uprising from women over mandatory hijabs in 1980, and then everyone like started thinking that, well, these people are just now going around and slaughtering like thousands of people. There was there was a police force called Savak, which was the Shah's own special police force, and the Islamists, after they took over, they were going around and literally slaughtering and murdering anyone associated with Savak, including just like the admin people, like a minimum wage telephone answering admin person. They were going slaughtering all of them, right? And they were not making any exceptions whatsoever. And I think when people started seeing that, it was almost a bit like, hey, hold on a sec, can we calm down? But it was such a heated environment, like you didn't want to step against the team. Like they had extreme, stupendous amounts of momentum. And and pretty much within that first year, that's when Iran managed to get itself into the war with Iraq against Saddam Hussein.
Mhm.
And yeah, granted, Iraq invaded Khorramshahr, which is in the southwest of Iran, but Iran, they they triggered them basically to begin with, and Khomeini, who took over, the guy we got on the album cover, I mean, don't get me wrong, Saddam was a piece of shit also, and
Yeah.
his sons were 10 times worse than he was, but the point being that that war worked in their advantage. So the Iranian people went from this revolution into a 7.5 year long war that had up to 2 million people casualties, and it was just such a like a traumatic thing for them. They didn't even have time to, when you're in a situation of war and the boogeyman's outside, you're not going to start thinking about, oh, this new government that just took over are the evil people. You're going to say those people outside are the evil people, we need to stand against them, which worked
Mhm.
perfectly for strengthening the Islamic Republic. That's the reason why they're still here. If that war never happened, I reckon there probably would have been another uprising or some form of, okay, we need to be at least a little bit more fucking um there needs to be more moderation here with these ideologies, which Islam has none of, by the way. Um so that's basically what happened. So it had to get to the 90s and the late 90s where people finally had the chance to like kind of be a bit like, hang on a minute.
Yeah,
It's like you fall into a really terrible toxic marriage, and then only after you've had kids you realize that, hang on, this is a fucking horrible situation to be in, what have we done, kind of thing. But now imagine that for an entire nation of people, right? And its laws, and a country with beautiful, rich history and culture and language and literature, good food, and just beautiful everything. And then now that country was in that situation, and it still is in that situation, by the way. And then the more they try to rise up against it, the more the government oppress people. The more they rise up against it, the more the government oppress people. But step by
mhm,
step and step, like we just keep going further and further away from that government. But that's the situation of the Iranian people. So to me, i felt like I felt like like almost like the stepchild rising against the abusive stepdad, by like
right.
singing shit against that religion. That's what it felt like. That's not so much the religion, but also the government as well, who are using the religion as a tool to justify their fucking bullshit. So yeah, that's what that's like, and I appreciate your comments, about, like, this is the thing. Trivax always Everyone always calls us brave, and I really appreciate that. But like, if you're in our position, anyone who has any level of decency and heart, they would do exactly the same thing. It's just a shame that more people inside of Iran don't have the courage to do that. But
Yeah.
they want to. Don't get me wrong, they want to. They just don't have the power right now.
Yeah. Um,
But they will. They will. We will fix it.
uh, Basically, so Trivax started out in 2004 in Iran, right?
2009.
2009? Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so and how old were you then playing shows, like these secret shows that you were playing?
The first show that we played, that was, how old was I? 16. I was
Oh,
16
wow.
years old. Yeah, it was the
Man.
first show that we played at the Kamal ul Mulk High School in Tajrish in Tehran. That school is still going if people want to Google it, so they can see where Trivex played. We
Mhm,
played at the underground amphitheater there, and we weren't allowed to use any vocals, and we lied to the school. Our drummer was a student there. I attended a different high school, and our bass player was too old to attend any school. So our drummer basically, I'll give him credit, like, he was a silver tongue. Like, he just went up to them and made up this whole lie about how we were going to celebrate the anniversary of the Islamic Revolution,
mhm,
and because it's in February, it's called 22nd of Bahman. Bahman is the month of Aquarius, which is basically, I think 22nd is like 8th of February, some 9th of February, something like that.
mhm.
So we did actually play on the anniversary, but then we went there and played metal instead. And 40 minutes into that show, I'm playing and I look up and I see smoke coming at me from the end of the room. I expected that was the police and it was actually tear gas, but then turned out that they just set the school on fire. So that was my first gig ever, and I was 16, as I said. So,
That's
you
fucking
know,
epic.
yeah, it was like, it was really scary and exhausting. But I remember, like, after I experienced the magic of metal and how you can, like, it took me years to even process, like, that first gig, really,
Yeah.
even though I then went on to play shows after. But like, it took me years to understand what that did to me, because that, like, when I went home, I was like totally exhausted, and eventually got back. And because we actually played like early afternoon, like, it was a really weird time for a gig, and then we kind of had the whole day. And I remember I went home and I slept for like 5 hours in the middle of the day. And I
Yeah.
remember when I woke up, I was not the same person anymore. I
Right.
remember, like, my body language changed. Everything, like, changed about me. I was like, okay, okay, this kid who felt like he was invisible pretty much like forever, for all his life, all of a sudden now I know I have the fucking power. And I just saw, like, what this music could do to the human psyche, because they were truly and utterly feral at that show. And none of them were metalheads. They never heard of metal, but the music just fucking took
Fucking
hold of
moved
them.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, it did. That vessel thing I'm talking about? This music
Mhm.
brought in some motherfucking spirits that took over that entire room. You could feel it. There was such a tangible electricity of everyone just screaming at the top of their lungs. Like, why are they screaming? It's just music, but it's not just music. Metal
Oh,
is,
no.
it's a spiritual tool, and I only intend to work on honing that spiritual craft as much as possible. That's the reason why I step foot on stage. This is not entertainment. This is a spiritual exercise.
Yeah. Did, how I mean, I would assume that your parents were, like, knowing what you were doing as far as the band was concerned, but did were they supportive in any way? Were they concerned or overly concerned, like, or angry with you? I'm just curious, like, how that was.
All of the above.
It makes sense.
Literally,
Yeah.
literally all of the above. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's it. They were, they I had to really fight to win their approval, and I happened to be extremely blessed with two of the best human beings. In fact, two of the best humans I know on earth happen to be my, my parents. So,
Mhm.
and I know how lucky I am to even be able to say that. Not many people can. And it comes with a price as well, because we've I won't say this because it's gonna be a problem, but yeah, it was just yeah, yeah, no, they were very supportive, and if I'll, in like, long story short, without going into all the nitty and gritty, if it wasn't for
Mhm.
them, I wouldn't be here doing what I am doing today.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. I mean, I could probably, I get the sense of, like, what kind of sacrifices they made for you, just by what you're feeling, and we're over this Wi-Fi connection, and I could already get the sense just how important, um, certain actions by your parents, put you where you at today. Um, and that's nothing but love right there, man. That's what any good parent should do for their kids, and yeah, there's in that type of country and that type of rule, um, you want to see your kids succeed and be supportive in any way you can. I know I do as well as a parent. Um, so uh, you have one extraordinary path, man, in this life, and I'm just so honored to have you in front of me, having this conversation with you because it's going a lot better than my wildest expectations. Here I am, thought I was just going to talk about Trivax and some of your past guests because your guest on the podcast. I mean, nothing short of influential in their own craft. Um, very um some very important guests that I hold near and dear to my heart. Tom G. Warrior comes to mind, and
I was
Eric.
literally he was on my mind just as you were speaking. I was thinking about Tom.
Yeah, I mean he's such a
Yeah, yeah,
great. I mean I've met him one time, my
yeah.
first time to Norway, and he was very very lovely gentleman at the time. He was very gracious enough to take a picture with me, and at Nice Blood record shop in Oslo. So that was amazing, and
Oh,
I
that's a
really
cool place to bump into him. Yeah, yeah.
it really
Nice.
was. You know what? I think if I'd have been 5 minutes later, if I'd have walked in, I would have missed him completely
Right on.
because it was getting close to the shop hours to close. And I walked in and I was just, fumbling through some of the used CDs, and I heard a familiar voice, and I was like, look over my shoulder, and I'm like, that's fucking Tom G. Warrior right fucking there. And, just being everything Hellhammer and fucking Triptychon and Celtic Frost fan, I mean, since I was 16, 17 years old,
That's cool.
uh, I was just like, "Holy shit, man!" I'm not gonna be out all this way, my first time in Norway, and I'm not gonna tell the man hello and just give him some respect, because he has a lot to do with not just me personally, but the fucking the entire genre to begin with. I mean,
Exactly.
he's
Yeah.
he's a fucking pioneer in this shit, dude, and to watch him, be on your channel, and speak the things that he did, and just and hear more about his story, hear more about what makes him keep going, and it's always all inspiring. It really is.
Yeah, no, he's a very, very cool human. Um, I learned a lot from him, and there's like musical influence, and that part is like cool, but I think the personal thing is like even cooler,
Mhm.
I have a lot of respect for him, and I think he's one of those people that I think is perhaps wildly misunderstood, you know,
Oh yeah, how so?
but by a lot of people. I don't want to like go into like the the details and how people perceive things over social media. But I
Yeah.
think he is someone that people might see certain things and then they'll like latch certain things to you, but he's like a lot more switched on about life and things in general than people give him credit for. And I
Mhm.
think that people who maybe get a little like, oh, you're a musician, why are you talking about this? I think they should maybe ask themselves those questions. Well, why aren't you thinking or talking about certain issues? Like
Yeah,
where's
definitely.
your passion? Like
Yeah.
do you don't pick up a guitar in fucking Switzerland, in like what was it, like 70s or whatever he started playing, and then start doing the Hellhammer stuff in like early 80s in Switzerland when there's fucking no one else there. You don't pick up the instrument and start playing radical fucking music like that, writing radical fucking lyrics
Mhm.
because you are just passing by. You don't do that, and I'm always interested to hear what someone like that has to say about things, and whether you agree with it or not, that's your prerogative as much as it would be his prerogative to want to express those viewpoints, so but having spent a bit of time with him off camera since those episodes. I don't want to like make this blow this out of proportion or anything, but like I can tell you, like he knows what's up,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that only increases my respect for someone like him, or like some of the other people that, as you said, I've had the absolute pleasure of talking to on the podcast, and it's actually, what, speaking of him in particular, it's really, for me as a fan of music, I'm a very confident person. Like I'm not shy to speak to anyone, whether it's someone who has a high stature in a band or someone who is working at a bakery, like I treat people with respect, and I'm
Same.
curious to hear. Yeah, yeah, it's a good quality. Like you'll find like life becomes so much more interesting when you start asking people more questions, just taking interest in people rather than
Yeah,
just being
definitely.
me, 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 me. It's so
That's right.
much more interesting. And but having said that, like with someone like him, it's reaffirming to me what heavy metal means to me, and then know someone like him, who never, he never really chickened out. Like he never wimped out. He said it to himself. He said young Tom would be proud because I never wimped out, and he stayed true to his core values. I fucking love that. I
Yeah,
fucking love that. The fact that, because that's what I know heavy metal to be. Heavy metal is a fucking attitude, and it's reaffirming to know that amongst the fewer people who had at least some role in creating the sound and the subculture that we all love and cherish, that attitude is actually there. It wasn't by mistake. It wasn't an accident. It's intentional. That's what I
yeah.
fucking like. Yeah.
I love that too, man. I really love that. And on the flip side of that coin, uh, have you and you don't have to name anyone by my name, but have you
Yeah.
ever encountered a situation or a person like, an artist where the moment you start talking with the person, you just knew that, this is gonna be a long hour or like a long 2 hours where you just kinda like, "Eh, maybe not. Maybe I shouldn't be talking to this person as long as I should be."
Hmm. No, because it's a good question, but if it's, so here's how I'll put it. If it's a podcast situation, that person's kind of forced to listen to you. And when they listen to you and they realize that you're actually an interesting person and have interesting viewpoints, they're kind of in it now,
Mhm.
and I don't know. Like I said, I'm a confident person, so I don't like go up to someone with like a, like shrugging my shoulders. Excuse
Yeah,
me,
yeah.
sir, can I take a picture? that's, that's not me, like I'm just
Yeah,
not
yeah.
like that at all. Maybe I was like that when I was definitely like that when I first moved to the UK and had didn't even realize that people in bands were real people, because I
Right,
always
right.
only ever saw them on a screen of a TV back home in Iran. So, um, yeah, to me, I think when you speak to someone, I actually tell you what, I think that only the real insecure, usually smaller musicians are the ones that kind of see themselves on a high horse, because the musicians, like say in the example of Tom or some of the other people I've had on the podcast who have been around like for many years,
Mhm.
those people, I think, I think most people don't realize this. And I was thinking about this the other day. They have they have an interaction fatigue of everyone just constantly putting them on a pedestal.
Yeah.
Like I'm like this, and I've experienced it. It's the strangest thing when you have someone coming up to you saying, "Oh my god, I want to take a picture," and like, "Can you sign this thing?" And then it's kind of like, that's cool, but then they're, and I welcome that wholeheartedly. Don't get me wrong. Let me be clear. I feel super honored that I would even get recognized for my work and someone would go out of their way to approach me, because it's uncomfortable to do that, right?
Yeah.
So I make time for them, but that's why I also like, when I meet people, I also like to ask questions about them. And I like to probe them to bring that dynamic a little bit more even. So it's like more of like a level playing field. We're seeing eye to eye rather than me on this pedestal looking down at you. I
Right.
almost have to like fight it a little bit, and
Yeah.
then just be more friendly, because but then sometimes, very rarely to be fair, but like sometimes you'll meet someone who all they want to do is take a picture, and as soon as they take a picture, they're like, "Thanks," and then they walk off, and it's like, I feel like I've just been violated, you know?
Yeah.
It's like,
I ain't no
that's
fucking
such a
whore. What you doing?
this is such a fucking weird interaction. Like,
Yeah.
how about like fuck the picture, bro? Like, don't even bother tagging me. Like, just talk to me. Like, who are you? Why are you
Yeah.
interested in this? Like, where do you come from? I'm so much more interested in having a conversation with someone. And funnily
Yeah.
enough, I'm pretty sure I heard James Hetfield say exactly the same thing. And that's just, that's what I hope to get. The reason why I'm playing this music, the reason why it's on public platforms, the reason why I do the podcast is because I fucking like connecting with humans who
Yeah.
are
Same here, man.
interesting. Yeah,
Same
yeah,
here.
that's it. That's it. That's the real reward, So, and I think this, to come back to the point, just to very quickly sort of summarize the thing that I was saying as we wrap this up, is like, to me, I think a lot of these people who've been around for like 20, 30 years and have been musicians, a lot of them have this fatigue. They've got pedestal fatigue, like,
Mhm.
because they're just, like, they don't get treated like humans in some places, especially you do a tour in South America. Yeah, it might be like intoxicating when everyone treats you like a god, but then you go home and you still gotta fucking put the bins out and take a shit and go to the supermarket and stand in the queue. So, let's make it more about that human connection. That's
Yeah.
that's my
Well,
approach and attitude.
I appreciate that. I appreciate it. That's what you did it with the majority of all your guests, if not all of them, and including here on my podcast. I feel like it's turned into our podcast at this point, and
Fuck yeah. That's it.
I love that. I love that, man, because like there's I could think of very few instances where people are like kind of turning the mic on me. So I appreciate that, and
Cool. Well,
nothing's
you have very interesting stuff to say, man. I'm very intrigued by your story, and I think you should share that more often. I think if it comes up again, just as my advice, obviously it's your podcast, do what you will. I think your story is a very important one. I think a lot of people would benefit from hearing that, so I wouldn't
I
shy away
I
from
actually
sharing it.
well, I appreciate that, dude. I really do, and I don't shy away from it. If it ever comes in conversation, I'm an open book. I really am, because I know that you know I've always been told that my story is a story just like any other person who has a fair amount of time in recovery. That it's a story of hope, and and
It
if I
is.
could share that little bit of hope with just one person, that gets them thinking that maybe I shouldn't drink today, maybe I shouldn't drink right now, then I did my fucking job. That's the way I look at it.
Hell yeah, brother. That's it.
Well, man, I'm not gonna take too much of your time anymore, Cheyenne. This was a fucking I love this chat we had. Please stay in please stay in touch. I'll stay in touch with you for sure. I'll find myself in Europe, more often than not. I actually just flew through London not too long ago.
Sorry to hear that.
but uh but yeah, man. Everyone who doesn't follow Cheyenne's podcast, Iblis Manifestations, his band Trivax, themetalcoach.com is where you can find him. Thank you again, Cheyenne. This was fucking amazing, man. And I wish
Thank you,
you
brother.
nothing but the best.
Thank you very much, brother. It's absolutely my pleasure, and thank you for inviting me. I'm really glad we had this chat. Okay, and hope to bump into you in person at some point.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, are you going to Inferno next year?
Yeah, I do the panels there. I imagine I'll be back there next year. Sure.
Well, shit, I'm there. I'm there next year. I already got the tickets are booked, hotels booked, everything's good to go. So I'm going.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, I hope to see you there, man. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.